now. I am Alex Mahajer. I'm your host. And this morning, 198,000. That's the number of Georgia voters who have been purged from the voter rolls in Georgia, according to a lawsuit that was filed yesterday in federal district court in Georgia, alleging that the Republican Secretary of State there has wrongfully removed 198,000 voters from the rolls ahead of this January 5th runoff election that will determine the fate of the U.S. Senate. Voter purges and voter suppression is not new for Georgia, so we'll be discussing this lawsuit, its implications, and just how long people have to reinstate their voter registration deadlines, and cover all of today's top headlines, all of this and more on the AM Report. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the program. If you're watching on the HAPS app or website or platform, please click the award button. Let us know you're enjoying it. It'll pop up right on screen right above me right here. And let me know you're enjoying the broadcast. Greatly appreciate it. Or if you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, YouTube, Periscope, leave us a comment, ask your questions, and we can bat around with you live on air. And this morning, we will be discussing this voter purge of 198,000 Georgia voters in the state of Georgia ahead of this runoff election. And we're going to talk about the lawsuit that was filed there and the history of voter purges, both in Georgia and by the Georgia governor, Brian Kemp, who really has masterminded this technique of voter suppression. And now we know it's alive and well in Georgia. The Georgia election was decided for Joe Biden by 13,000 votes. So every vote matters, and we're gonna dive into that this morning. But we've got a lot of headlines to cover first. Before we get into it, our today's top headlines. What's the haps, guys? Donald Trump released a 45-minute video that news networks are refusing to air because it is propaganda and election denialism that some are calling a mentally ill rant. And Twitter has just fully blasted Trump for this video, which is really quite deranged. And I don't want to show you clips here because it's nuts. People are calling it Trump's 46 minutes of Looney Tunes election denialism. The White House is refusing to say that Trump has faith in Attorney General Bill Barr just days after Bill Barr disputed Trump's election fraud claims, and after a Fox News interview where Trump implied that the Department of Justice is part of a grand conspiracy with Joe Biden and Venezuela to steal the election. So it looks like even Trump's personal lackey, Bill Barr, has started to get the cold shoulder from Trump. And Trump's days are numbered, and he looks like he's going to take down as many people as he can with him. So the U.S. is reporting 3,100 coronavirus deaths in just one day yesterday, which is 20% more than the previous record. And the American death toll is now 274,000. So the coronavirus is getting exponentially worse, and everyone, please stay safe. In other coronavirus news, the former presidents Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush have all volunteered to receive the coronavirus vaccine publicly to sort of calm fears about the safety of the vaccine and whether it's safe to take, which should begin distribution to Americans by the end of the year. And according to the CDC, all Americans should be available. It should be available to all Americans by the second quarter of next year. The GOP is worried that Donald Trump is going to have a rally in Saturday for the two Republican senators, Perdue and Loeffler, going into the runoff races in January because of his election fraud claims. They're worried that it's going to do more harm than good to have him in Georgia, claiming that the election was rigged, and it disincentivizes Republican voters from turning out because they think that the fix is in, and this could affect the outcome of the election in Georgia for these two Senate races. And speaking of these two Senate races, we've got in Georgia the runoff election. Now all eyes are on it. We talk about it on this program a lot. If you're watching this, leave me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking about these the top headlines, and chime in. We've already got some comments. Thank you for the award, Daniel Goff. The Appreciate You Award. He's saying hashtag meal train fight food insecurity. I think people don't realize that food insecurity is a major problem in the United States, because we think that since we're the first world, we don't have food insecurity, but it's a huge problem, especially in the coronavirus pandemic. People don't have enough to eat and people are going hungry. So anything you can do to help that effort. Gimme Props is questioning my credentials. Hey, look me up if you don't trust my credentials or don't know what they are. Look me up. But enough about me. Let's talk about this voter purge that's happened in the state of Georgia. Now, a federal lawsuit was filed yesterday in the state of Georgia, and we have that here. Basically, what it's saying is that in Georgia, it's a group called Black Voters Matter. It's alleging that the Secretary of State there, Brad Raffensperger, has violated the National Voter Registration Act and wrongfully purged around 198,000 citizens from the voter rolls by claiming that they had moved from their address listed on their voter registration. Now, this is a tactic that is used with the voter purges a lot. They use this tactic and have used this tactic for years to claim that voters are ineligible by saying they moved out of the area or moved out of state. Now, the lawsuit is claiming that none of these citizens have actually moved and is asking for a preliminary injunction to stop the Secretary of State from prohibiting the citizens of Georgia from exercising their right to vote in the upcoming January elections. Specifically, the state has said that thousands of voters had submitted postal change of address forms, but the post office is saying that they did not. They did not move, and the post office is confirming they did not move. And this is on top of the fact that in Georgia, in violation of federal law, has used an unlicensed contractor who used the wrong list. So the lawsuit is based on the investigative findings of journalist Greg Palast and the Palast Investigative Fund, and we're hoping to have him on next week to talk about this. And he's been on the program before. He's done excellent work here. And let's talk a little bit more about the National Voter Registration Act. It's a law that says that the state must use a licensee of the U.S. Postal Service in order to determine who has moved or changed their address, and Georgia did not. According to this lawsuit, the National Voter Registration Act and Georgia law require that the state use that licensee to determine whether a citizen had moved from the residence listed on their voter registration. And the statute reads, quote, voter removal programs is under a heading called voter removal programs. However, the Secretary of State, Raffensperger, failed to secure a licensee as required by law and instead used an unlicensed change of address list provided by Total Data Technologies of Nebraska, which is not a qualified licensee of the United States Postal Service. So this is coming just days before the January 7th, the December, let me get this date correct, the December 7th registration deadline. So the deadline to register to vote is December 7th. It's coming up. And if you've been purged from the rolls and the voter registration deadline passes and this lawsuit isn't able to successfully file its injunction, then you'll not be able to vote in the December 7th election, in the January 5th election. So December 7th is the registration deadline. And because of this finding by the Palast Investigative Fund, a Save My Vote, a nonprofit organization, has released a public service announcement about this issue. And I want to play that for you now. It's featuring actress Rosario Dawson, and it's encouraging voters to check their voter registration deadlines in Georgia ahead of the January 5th runoff election. Here's that.
In Georgia, voters have vanished.
And today to come out and not be able to vote and no one can give you an explanation, like, it's extremely emotional and it bothers me. It bothers me to my core.
Has this ever happened to you before?
Never.
Before the election, 198,000 voters were illegally purged from the rolls, their registrations canceled, and their voices silenced. Investigative reporter Greg Palast exposed this mass purge. He revealed that voters of color were the targets of this attack. Palast's report for the ACLU and Black Voters Matter disclosed that the ethnic cleansing of voter rolls was launched by this man.
Brian Kemp!
You want a politically incorrect conservative, that's me.
Mr. Kemp, are you removing black voters from the voter rolls?
This is Rosario Dawson, and I am asking all you Georgians to make sure to go to SaveMyVote2020.org and check if you are one of the voters who have been purged from the voter rolls. You need to re-register.
So look, voter purging is not new, and Brian Kemp has orchestrated voter purges for many years. This was a problem in the 2016 election and in 2018. And what happened is that millions of voters are wrongfully purged from the rolls because they claim that they've moved out of state. And also, in the past, there's different ways that they've used these voter purges, which have on their face the pretext of the purges is a good one. They say if you've died, if you've moved, if you're no longer eligible, we have to purge our rolls to keep them up to date. But what they're doing is in the past, for instance, they've said that your first and last name might be Joe Brown. And there's a Joe Brown in Wisconsin. And so this is the same voter. You've moved out of state. Now, that would happen, and they purged from the rolls regardless of whether or not they had the same middle initial or not, whether they had the same birthday. They just looked at those two names, and guess who's got the most common names in America? It's people of color. People of color tend to have the most common names in the United States, and so this is a way of targeting voters that might vote against the interests of the ruling political class. So the voter purges are not new. This PSA is asking for people to go check their voter registrations and make sure you're still registered to vote while this lawsuit plays out. And we'll see what happens with these lawsuits. But look, the deadlines that are coming up, we've got December 7th is the voter registration deadline, and December 14th, early in-person voting begins. January 5th is the election day. And so keep your eyes on this. Make sure you're registered to vote. And if you're in Georgia, make sure you're registered to vote. If you've got friends and family in Georgia, make sure that they're still registered. This has been the AM Report for HAPS News, the network of now. I'm Alex Mahajer. We are live every weekday morning at 7:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Eastern with all of your quick political news and headlines to get your day started right. Give me props. I accept your apology. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mel from Sydney. Thank you, Peter, for the high five award. Daniel Goff says we get an email confirmation in my state of Maryland, and it's true that some states are better about this than others, but in states where there is a concerted effort to suppress Black votes, this kind of thing is happening. And so vote Kemp out, says Daniel Goff. Thank you very much for your comments. If you're watching on the HAPS website, app, or platform, please click the award button. Let me know you're enjoying it. Or if you like this content, if you like this journalism, please consider sponsoring it. You can do that by visiting haps.tv/@Alex, or you can subscribe there so you can get notifications of this broadcast. We'll be back tomorrow morning with Miranda Yaver. She's a political scientist and postdoctoral scholar at UCLA to discuss current events and hot topics. This has been the AM Report. Thank you so much. Have a good Thursday, and we will see you all tomorrow.